So not every inbound lead is obviously a qualified lead. And so one of the ways to identify whether it's good or not is to do two things: discovery and qualifying. The two sort of go hand in hand. I know James also has a big opinion on this, but discovery and qualification are two different things. Qualification is more for selfish reasons for your company. Like, you have a criteria of what is an ideal customer fit, maybe a certain amount of revenue that they're closing. Every industry is a little different. And you only get that information by asking questions to that lead or doing some level of pre-call prep. So if it's an inbound lead and you're noticing, I don't know, if you're selling in the e-commerce space and you have a SaaS product, then going to that prospect's website, if it looks like it was made with, like only Fiverr, nothing against Fiverr, but it wasn't like a professional website, there are some things there that could indicate it's not really a quality lead. Plus, once you start asking them questions, you can tell by their answers if they're legitimate or not. And so that's one of the way to do it for the inbounds.
Yeah, and I'll throw in something along those lines. This has something to do with a talk track that I've been having lately about people who are buyers who are sophisticated versus unsophisticated buyers, right? So you got sophisticated buyers who know what they're talking about. They've gone through the due diligence. They've looked at your site. They've probably talked to a few other vendors, and they really just know. They're asking very specific questions about your solution, right? Whereas the unsophisticated buyer, they just kind of are there to look at, somebody told them to look into this or whatever it is, and they really don't know what they're looking for or how to look for it. And I'm not saying one's better than the other, by the way. I'm saying if we're looking for least path of resistance, then we want to look for the people that are experienced, the ones who come to us, who can tell us how they came to us. And identifying what a sophisticated buyer versus an unsophisticated buyer looks like, there's a little nuance to it, but it's really, I just ask them, okay, how'd we get here? Like, what brought you to this point? What have you done so far? What have you looked at so far? So, because I don't want to reinvent the wheel here. I just want to show you what you're looking for. So those kind of least path of resistance ones, where you want to start to really find, I'm having a podcast actually right after this about frictionless selling, where it's, how do you move as much friction for the people that want to buy as possible? And so you have to figure out what those friction points are and what those people need to be removed so that you can actually get there.
Yeah. So there's, I'll talk about the first point, triggers, and maybe John, you'll talk about it, and then we'll sort of riff out on here. So triggers, I mean, I still think if let's just say the economic downturn is happening and people are like, it's just crazy, shit hit the fan, but you're noticing that companies are still hiring, and it's not like they posted a job ad 2 months ago. I'm talking about they posted one in the last couple of weeks. That's a pretty good indicator. They still have money to invest in, and they're potentially still growing. So that's something I would look for. Obviously, it depends on your industry, but I'd look for hiring.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, this is the whole resetting that ICP. It's like when you and for those of you who don't know, like ideal customer profile, right? Who do you sell to? There's characteristics that are very specific to what a tier one prospect looks like. You have to reset that on a consistent basis. You do, especially now, because in your ICP, you now have to look at, my opinion here, I think you now have to look at the daisy chain of who their ICP is, for instance, because a client could look great to us. They're in the software industry. They have the predictable revenue model. They're a mid-market and above. They got, 50 sales reps or more. Fantastic. Looks like, but if they sell to, retail, you know what I mean? Like some industries that got hammered over the past however many years, you know what I mean? Like, then they're probably not going to be a good fit for you because who they're selling to is struggling. And so you have to look further. And I also think ideal customer profile isn't something enough clients actually pay enough attention to. They do the basic stuff. They go on Zoom Info, and we love them, by the way. And they go in and they put all these check and they say, okay, demographics and all this other, and then they get their list, and then they dump those lists into Salesforce, and they give their list the rep the territory, and all the rep do is hammers through that list and says, okay, I guess I got to hit this one next. No. In a down economy, rip all that apart, throw it away, get your team into a room, grab a whiteboard, and really get down to who's buying now, why are they buying, what industries are hot, who sells into those industries, who do we have people that sell into those industries and partnerships and those type of things. And that will tell you where to go. Least path of resistance is what you're looking for. Don't get me wrong. All the other clients that fit that profile of your previous, those are ones you want to nurture and add as much value to as you possibly can through this downturn, so that when they're ready to buy, they remember you and what you did for them. But if you got to sell, you got to find clients that are reset on your ICP all the way.
To another point of how to find prospects, there's one sort of a creative way to do it that I don't know that many people do it. I do it for myself. And then there's another one. So I'll talk about those 2 points, unless you want to pause and then talk about ICP a little bit more.
No, drop it on me.
Okay. So I'm talking about the last point on the slide there, the LinkedIn events though. But if you're whatever industry you're in, so if you're in like cybersecurity, e-commerce, whatever it is, if you go to LinkedIn and on the search you type in like cybersecurity and then you filter it by events, you'll find companies are hosting or people that are hosting events in your industry. And the people that are attending those events on LinkedIn could potentially be your future buyers. So what I'd recommend is that I'd do that, and then I'd start connecting with those people, those attendees, and then just sort of qualify them, see if they're even they're potentially a fit for your company. It's cold prospecting, but there's something warm there that they're familiar. That event is something you can talk about mutually. The second thing I wanted to talk about really quick is how to find prospects that are still interested. So if you have anyone that's referring you business or has referred you business, what I'd recommend is reach back out to your inner circle, and your inner circle will reach out to their inner circle, and then so on and so forth. And so that's two ways you can do it. I consistently do it today to get leads. I made a post about this, but I don't know anyone personally that is using LinkedIn voice notes. And I don't know who it was that made not me, but somebody else made a post that they did like an internal poll, and they realized that like the executives aren't getting voice notes from any salesperson. It's not on desktop, it's more on mobile, but voice notes for sure. It's like the WhatsApp voice note. And I believe also LinkedIn has that feature where you can use like I think it's with Vidyard, where you can record a video and just send it directly into the DM. No one's really doing that to me. And I'm getting blasted with cold DMs on LinkedIn.
The automated LinkedIn stuff right now is just off the charts annoying. I wish every LinkedIn automation, I'm sorry, I'm going to cross off Adrian and the Sell Better team. I'm going to cross off one group that will never sponsor us, which is an automated email thing on LinkedIn. I'm sorry. I don't care how much money they have. I'm never going to take money from them because I get about 400 to 500 emails on a weekly basis. I would say 90+% of them are the automated drip campaign crap that say the same things. I get multiple of the exact same message from different companies. Okay. Wow. But the ones that do stand out are the ones that are using video and the ones that are using voice messages, because there's just something different about it. So there's almost like this curiosity factor to it. Like, hey, what is this? And so it gets you listened to. Now, there are some things that you have to do to make sure that that voicemail is a strong one so that people actually stay listening to it, right? And there's some structure around that. But yeah, LinkedIn voice notes, LinkedIn video. I mean, we've been talking about LinkedIn video here for what, over 3 years at this point. Yeah. And I still get maybe one, maybe two in my inbox. And it's a way to show the personalization. The whole thing about video is to show show who you are as a person. So I'm going to beg you, and Vidya's probably going to hate me for this, whatever. I love you as a sponsor and I love your tool, but please don't do this. Superimpose Adrian and then be like, hey, and then when you open it up, it's like, hey, how you doing? Thanks so much for opening up my email. And it's an obvious canned thing that actually does more harm than good in a lot of ways. So I think there's pieces of that work, but my go-to is you have to tell a story to the people that are engaged, that are potentially. So once you get your ICP and once you get your personas reset and all that other stuff, now it's like, how can we add value to this persona? How can we add value in some way, shape, or form without trying to sell them on anything, and kind of put together a sequence that is more value oriented than call to action oriented, right? Where you're giving them free tools or free resources, or even stuff you came across as a sales rep. For instance, if you're a sales rep selling to sales, I don't care what you're selling to sales. If you have cool ass resources that internally you use that are free or something like that you just came across that have helped you, feel free to send that over to the VP of sales. Be like, yo, I don't know how your sales team is, but have you seen Crystal Knows yet? Crystal Knows is a crazy thing. Like, I can see your disc profile here, man. Like, you should share this with your team as a give, and just kind of the whole Gary V jab, 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 right hook stuff. Right. So I think you need to relook at your cadences, relook at your ICP, come up with a cadence or a sequence that is heavy on the value-oriented stuff, but also pinpoints pain points that they have throughout the process, right? This is why I ask a lot of questions when I prospect. If you look at a screen, right, you can still read the first 10 words on the screen on your iPhone. So that, to me, I always ask a very thought-provoking question, and then I back it up with the reason I'm asking that question, because the goal is to get you to open up my email there. And if I can ask you a question that's based on your persona and you go, huh, Why'd you ask that? And then you open it up. And I said, well, the reason I ask is because people like you who have that problem leverage our solution this way. Thought it'd be worth the conversation. If that's not a problem of yours, no worries. I'll send you some resources here next week to play around with. So I think it's really getting creative with the story that you tell.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know what an NPS is, it stands for Net Promoter Score. It's essentially a survey that's sent out to paying customers, existing customers. Some companies do it 30 days, 60 days, 90 days after they've already signed up. And it's a survey asking them essentially to rate from 0 to 10 their satisfaction level, 0 being the worst, 10 being raving fans. And so if a lot of companies are doing this, SaaS companies are doing this. And so what you should do is, if your company does do this, then you should go to the results, the surveys that are 8, 9s, and 10s, which means 8, they loving you, 9s, they really love you, and 10s, they're like raving fans, they'll bleed for you. You go after those, and then you can call them and or email them. I would do both. And I would ask them for a referral because they love you. So why wouldn't they want to help you out? And it could be a very simple conversation like, hey, Adrian, like I noticed that you had rated us a 10 on the NPA server. I really appreciate it. I love having customers like you. The biggest compliment I can get is a referral. Who do you know that you think I'd be able to help? That could be a phone call. That could be an email. And it works. If you don't have an NPS survey, then you can do it in a very scrappy way. You can probably send, and if no one's doing any service in your company, then you go through your own pipeline of existing customers and do a mail merge or whatever you want to do, and then send them an email with a survey. And then if they come back with you tell them, hey, on a scale of 1 through 10, 10 being the best, what do you think? And they come back at a 10, that's your NPS survey right there.
Yeah. The referrals is something not enough people pay attention to. I think it's a lost art in sales. It just takes to ask, but it does take some structure to it too. You need to, that's why going back to I sound like a broken record here, but going back and resetting your ICP, resetting your values or your persona, and then getting a list of clients that fit that exact profile. Carry that. I call it a hit list. We, here at JV Sales, we have every rep has a top 25 list. These are the exact companies they want to get into. Okay. So instead of asking just kind of, hey, for referrals, you can say, hey, do you know anybody on this list? Or do you know anybody who looks like somebody on this list? Because that makes it a lot easier for somebody to go, actually, I know them. Let me make an introduction for you there. So I think there's an art and a science to it, but I think referral and really being specific about it. And if you can get creative within your organization, feel free to come up with your own little mini referral program where you can compensate people for it. I mean, sometimes you can go to the company and say, hey, company, can we offer an extra month worth of service on top of it if somebody gives us a referral? Or you yourself to say, hey, I'm putting together a mini little referral plan to try to drum up more business. We try to find people like you, whatever, and I'll give you this in return, something creative, something nice, not something tacky, right? So those are some things that you can and should get creative with when it comes to asking for referrals, your ICP, because there's other people out there that know more than you, and don't fight this alone, right? Put together a team internally and externally, start playing around with some different stuff.